The construction of railroad systems during the mid-19th century proved to be a pivotal point in the histories of both India and Mexico. Massive countries suddenly felt much smaller now that there was a system in place that could efficiently transport people and resources across thousands of miles. This newfound connectivity brought about economic growth and other technological advancements, but also became a source for political and social disputes. The construction, use, and destruction of railroad systems had significant physical and symbolic impacts on both India and Mexico. On April 16, 1853, the first Indian train ran 21 miles from Bombay to Thane and marked the beginning of an era. For the first time, the agricultural hubs of central India were efficiently connected with the port cities that lined the coasts. The British government designed and constructed all the railway systems throughout India in an attempt to better unify the country. Before this time, bullocks were responsible for most of India's intercity trade and would have to carry large loads on their backs. This slow, inefficient system only allowed for about 30 kilometers of travel in one day, opposed to the 600-kilometer pace that trains were able to cover. Trains were faster and able to carry larger loads, which resulted in a much more efficient cost per unit system. In his economic study, David Donaldson reached three conclusions. First, that trains decreased trade costs and interregional price gaps. Second, they increased interregional and international trade. And third, they increased real income levels. The British needed cooperation and collaboration from the Indian workforce in order to accomplish this massive undertaking. This image depicts the construction of the Bengal-Nagpur Railway between the years of 1890 and 1897. The scene shows a group of men, both Indian and British, standing in front of a tunnel that they had made to accommodate for the new railroad system. I found this image particularly interesting because, unlike other photos from the collection, it shows both groups of people collaborating on the project. I counted 4 British men who I deducted were the engineers. You can tell by their more formal attire that they had no intentions of helping with the manual labor, but I was still impressed with their hands-on approach and that all 4 of them were on the job site. In contrast, the Indian men were in clothes more suitable for working, and you can tell by the filth that accumulated on them that they had been hard at work before this photo was taken. Although the statuses of these two groups are largely separated, I did not get a sense of the master and slave dualism that I usually associate with colonizers. This scene looks much more compliant as both groups recognize the other's need in order to accomplish the task at hand. However, although the two groups may have worked well together during the railroad's construction, in reality, the British exploited India for their own financial and militaristic gain. They used the lines to transport soldiers and military supplies all throughout northern India. The construction of the railroad was not simply to better the economy of India, but instead to better link the two economies of Britain and India. This image shows an Indian cotton mill sometime between 1855 and 1862. The train is already overloaded with stacks of cotton, and both sides of the track are overflowing with identical packages waiting to be transported. As talked about in class, they used the railway to streamline transportation of cotton back to the British factories just so they could be re-imported into India as a manufactured good and sold at a premium. The British were using Indian labor and infrastructure to strip them of their own natural resources just so they could be sold back to them for profit. The Indians already held great opposition to the taxes being placed on them by the British colonizers, and this exploitation of labor and resources only fed into their anger leading up to their fight for independence. When we begin looking at the Mexican railways, we can identify various similarities and differences between the two systems. Mexico's railroad construction began in the 1830s, but it was not until Porfirio Diaz's reign that the railways truly began having an impact. Before Diaz came into office, Mexico had a meager 416 miles of track, but by 1910 it had grown to a staggering 11,954. New lines connected not only Mexican cities, but began creeping into the American places such as El Paso, Texas. Just as we saw in India, Mexico was also able to decrease the cost of transportation. Between 1877 and 1910, the cost of shipping a ton of cotton goods from Mexico City to Querétaro plunged from $61 to $3. This newfound continuity also had a positive impact on the mining industry. Because large industrial cities were better connected with the rural mining cities, it was now economically feasible to begin the mining and shipment of minerals such as copper, zinc, and lead. The railroad was a major player in returning Mexico to the economic glory that they had not seen since 1800. Similar to India, this economic growth led to social unease. To begin, native Mexicans did not like foreign investors having so much control over their domestic lines, and began noticing the corruption that was taking place within their own government. In addition, the west coast and southern portions of Mexico did not benefit nearly as much as their central and northern counterparts, and this noticeable gap between groups of people played a crucial role in the Mexican Revolution. During the Revolution, the railways were viewed as a product of the government and many of them were destroyed, as shown here. The creator of this image is unknown, but it comes from 1914 and can be found in the American Border Troops and Mexican Revolution collection of the De Gloria Library. The text on the image reads, "General Zapata, who threatens to hang Huerta and his cabinet when he captures Mexico City. Zapata's rebels destroying a railroad bridge." General Emiliano Zapata played a crucial role in both the Mexican Revolution and the Peasant Revolution in Morelos. Victoriano Huerta came to power as president of Mexico following a coup, but he was largely opposed by revolutionists such as Zapata. After 17 short months as president, Huerta was driven out of the country in 1914 by threats such as this one and forced to resign. The image depicts a group of Zapata soldiers destroying a railroad bridge. I found this powerful because the railroad was obviously a product of the government, and destroying it showed intense social objection and rebelliousness. Although the Mexican people were rebelling against their own government, and the Indian men were building for a foreign power, the railroad systems in both instances show tremendous economic growth. However, with this growth came a series of problems for both nations and resulted in social uprising.